Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. Well, it's that time of year again, folks. Yep, every October we find ourselves listening to ads and seeing signs on the side of the road. Elections. Voting, actually. If you will, you'll notice that you don't see a lot of political ads on WBBZ, and there's a reason for that. Voting is one of our most important rights. In many ways, it separates us from the vast majority of the rest of the world. Most of the ads you see on TV, well, they just don't have anything to do with what will make your life better as a citizen. Attack ads. They seem to work. If you can make your opponent unlikable, then you win. Here at WBBZ, we like to take a different path when it comes to the political process and the information that you get. You, the voter, deserve to hear about issues, the things that will make a difference in your life, in your pocketbook, the quality of life for you and your family. And that, my friends, is why it's my pleasure to have on this show Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz, who is running for an unprecedented fourth term in that office. We'll have the next half hour to try and bring you information that's useful to you, the voter. Next week, we'll be doing the same thing with Mark's opponent for the race of Erie County Executive, Chrissy Casilio. But right now, it's my privilege to welcome to the big picture incumbent candidate for Erie County Executive, Mark Poloncarz. Welcome to the show, Mark.
It's good to be back, Phil.
Well, I'm going to start out with giving you just a little while to take some time and tell us why you should be county executive for a fourth term.
Well, when I won last time in 2019, I really thought that was probably going to be the last time I was going to run for county executive. But I had no idea what we were going to face. In March of 2020, the whole world shut down with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we dealt with that for 2 years. Then we come out of it and things are getting a little better, and then we have the horrible mass shooting in May of last year. And the county was intimately involved in the response to that. We get a little better, and then we have the November superstorm that dropped 7 feet of snow in the south towns, and then the horrible December blizzard and other things that have occurred that were just terrible in our community. So a lot of the things that I wanted to get accomplished just got pushed to the side because we had to respond to emergency situations. We had to respond to crises. And as a result, what I thought I was going to be able to accomplish in this third term just didn't happen. And that includes completing the work at the Renaissance Commerce Park in Lackawanna, the old Bethlehem Steel site, starting the agricultural industrial park that we wanted to get done in Evans, Angola, that we really couldn't even do anything on because we had to push it aside with all that we were dealing with. Continuing to work on the Live Well Erie Health and Human Services Plan, working on health equity issues to ensure that everyone can lead their best life possible, regardless of whether they're an infant to a senior. And so most of that we didn't really even get going in this third term until this past year. And so I'm running for one more term to complete the work, to do the work of ensuring that this great new Buffalo, this new Erie County, which WBBZ is part of, is continuing to grow. We have the highest population we've had in decades. We have the lowest unemployment rate. There's still thousands of jobs that need to be filled, so we've got to work on that. We have the lowest property tax rate this county has seen. We're working on ensuring that we can create the most competitive community possible for businesses to come here, as well as ensuring it's the best quality of life possible for our citizens. So I'm running for one more term and only one more term. There will not be a fifth term if I'm lucky enough to get elected this year, but one more term to finish the work.
And you have proposed a reduction in property taxes, if I'm not mistaken, and also a moratorium on some taxes regarding energy consumption for heating homes and so on?
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have an agreement with the legislature that for the 2024 budget, we're reducing our tax levy. So it'll not only reduce the tax rate to the lowest rate possible for county property taxes, it will result in a reduction in all county property taxes. We don't control cities, towns, school districts, so that may go up, but the county's going down. And we also have an agreement to forego all sales tax collection on home heating fuels from the months of December, January, and February, the coldest months here. So regardless of whether you heat your house with natural gas, electricity, heating oil, propane, you would pay sales tax on that normally. But we're basically doing a sales tax holiday for the months in which those utility fuels would be used the most. So that should save taxpayers a decent amount of money in each month because they won't pay sales tax on it. That actually is going into effect this December. So it's not waiting until 2024 December. It goes into effect to December of 2023, and then it affects the months of January and February next year. So that's already set in place. The agreement with the legislature on the property tax levy reduction is already set in place. We still have to finish a couple little things with the budget, but I'm very proud that we were able to do that this year, especially at a time in which there's so much high inflation nationwide or worldwide. Inflation affects every area of our country. And when we're able to tell our residents, we're going to save you some money so that they can put that back, as you just noted, in their pocketbooks, it's a good thing.
Well, there's almost 1 million people in Erie County. There's, thousands of businesses. It's a complicated situation. As Erie County executive, you're overlooking a lot of different departments.
Correct.
What's the biggest challenge that you face on every day?
Well, it's managing all those departments. There's approximately 30 departments, offices, agencies that are under the umbrella of the county executive's office. Everything from social services, which is the biggest one with regards to the number of people that we employ as well as the amount of money that goes out the door, to parks, Homeland Security, of course highways, our Department of Public Works that runs our buildings as well as manages our 1,200 centerline miles of roads. And it's ensuring that we meet the needs of all those departments without having to break the bank to do it. So it's coming up with balanced budgets, which we've always done. It's ensuring that we're meeting the services at a time when we're getting asked by Albany, New York State, to pay more. We have more state mandates now than when I started, but we still have responsibilities for what I like to call the people's mandates, the parks, the roads, the arts and cultural institutions that make this great quality of life here in Erie County. So it's literally, I'm not a juggler in real life. When I see people juggle, I wish I could do that. I can't, but they're juggling 3 or 4 balls. It feels like every day I'm juggling 30 balls and making certain that you don't drop a ball, because if you drop one ball, they're all going down. It's not easy, but it's a great job. It's a true privilege to serve as county executive. And I'm looking forward to hopefully the people giving me an opportunity to serve again so we can keep on juggling those balls and create the best community we can.
Now, you mentioned mandates that come down from the state. And I've done interviews in the past with various county officials and other officials on other levels. The subject of state mandates comes in a lot. And I've heard different figures between 75 and 90% of the money that we spend is not something that we can decide on. It's something that we're told we have to do. Number one, is that benefit to our area, or does that really hurt what we can do for our own benefit if it's the state dictating how we spend our money?
Well, 90% of the services that are provided by county government are state mandated. And they're including major health and human services programs like Medicaid, temporary assistance for needy families, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which most people know better as food stamps, but also other things that we have to do, like Child Protective Services.
That's our money that they're telling us we have to spend it.
Some of it's the state's money that they provide us, but a lot of it's our money, like our sales tax and our property tax, and they're saying, here's how you got to spend it. And then there's the rest of government, the 10%, which people assumes is county government. When they're driving down the road, when they're going to a park, when they're going to a library, that's included in the other 10%. So it makes it really difficult. I'll give you an example. We just got hit with a $25 million additional bill for Medicaid for 2024 than what we paid in 2023. And it was something that's not just Erie County based, it's all counties are getting hit with these additional bills. The number will change based on the size of the county. But our Medicaid bill is basically going from $200 million to $225 million. we have to pay it. You can't ignore it. You can't say, well, I'm not going to pay what you're saying I owe in 24. I'm just going to pay you what I owed you in 23. And the state's like, we'll take the money out of your bank account. So you have to do it.
I don't want to get too far afield, but there's over 60 counties in New York, and they all have the same problem, this same problem.
Correct.
Isn't there a way that the counties can get together and somehow reduce the burden?
Well, we do have the New York State Association of Counties, which is all 62 counties. And then I am the president of the New York State County Executives Association for this year. So there's 16 county executives across New York State, and I'm the voice of them this year. We actually probably would have gotten hit with a bigger state mandate, except for the advocacy that we've done, and I've worked with Governor Kathy Hochul to reduce it. But the state has some significant financial difficulties that they're dealing with. And when that happens, they end up finding other ways to pay for it. And one of them is requiring the counties to pay more, because that mandate is not going directly for services. It's $25 million that's going to New York State. So it makes it difficult for us to then provide the other services that the public wants. So we advocate, but it's difficult unless you're actually one of those individuals who's negotiating the state budget. And we have a voice, but we're not there negotiating the state budget.
Some areas have hurricanes and some areas have earthquakes. You know, I know because I was in California for 20 years. Some areas have tornadoes, and Buffalo, Erie County, we have snowstorms.
Yep.
You came under some criticism for, now granted, it was like 7 feet of snow. I mean, we had some major storms. Are we prepared for the one climatic problem that we know is on the horizon for our area every year? Do we have enough equipment, enough personnel to handle a typical event like that?
I submit we're the best prepared region of any in the United States. What happened last December in the blizzard has been since documented as the worst blizzard in the continental United States below 6,000 feet. 6,000 feet is basically Denver, Mile High City. So we're talking the Rocky Mountains. It was horrible. And the problem is, as you bring up with climate change, and we're seeing these more frequent storms that are much worse, is that we have to be prepared. I think the problem so much with the storm that hit last December and the storm in November is it snowed so hard, it just stopped our ability to respond. The wind was so strong in the blizzard, 75-mile-per-hour winds. Those are hurricane force winds. It was shredding snow to the point where it created zero visibility for the entire region. And we could send out our emergency services personnel, but they could only get so far if the road was blocked ahead of them because there was a car that was stuck on the road. Same thing with our snowplows. We had to take our snowplow drivers off the road because they were coming in saying, I don't know where I'm going. If they didn't have GPS, they wouldn't know which way to turn right or left sometimes because they couldn't see what was in front of them. I think we are the best prepared to handle these major snowstorms than any other part of the United States. It was just such a horrific storm that even with all the equipment we have, we couldn't send people out because it was too dangerous. We were dealing with 75-mile-per-hour winds, zero visibility, temperatures that because of the wind chill were in the minus 20s, and it became a situation that if it had been like this for an hour or two, we would have been able to get through it a lot easier. The problem was it lasted 36 hours. I remember the blizzard of 77, which was always considered the worst storm in Buffalo's history. I was young, but I remember it. It lasted longer, but it wasn't as severe, and it wasn't as fierce with the winds and the whiteout conditions. This was the worst storm. And even in a situation we are the best prepared for it, no one could respond. And when I heard from the National Weather Service that it was the worst blizzard they'd ever seen in the continental U.S., less than 6,000 feet, it reminded me of what we could potentially deal with in the future. That's why we've bought more tracked vehicles. We've worked with the city of Buffalo to train them on additional emergency response activities, including having the fire department, the police, and the city of public works in learning our disaster land system. So there's always more work that could be done. We learned from the blizzard. We learned from the November storm. We apply those in the future. Just like in 2014, there was a snowstorm in which we had 7 feet of snow. We learned from that. We applied it in the future. The saying in the emergency services world is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Let's hope for the best, but we're preparing for the worst.
Now, you're running for a 4th term, and no county executive has served 4 terms before. What would you say to people listening now who are advocates of term limits for all political offices?
Well, we do have term limits. It's elections. I ran against an individual who was a first-term county executive. He only served 1 term, but the people didn't like the job he was doing. They liked what I was talking about, and they elected me. I think we do have term limits, if you consider elections as term limits, because it's not like you get elected and you're there for life. You have to serve a particular term, and then you go back before the public and explain why you think you're the best candidate to go forward. And I also think about it this way. I practiced law for a number of years before I entered government service, and I know if I had a really complicated legal issue, I don't want to go to the lawyer who's fresh out of law school. They don't understand it. They haven't had the experience to learn how to handle it. You want to go to the attorney who's actually dealt with many of these cases in the past and has experience to know what to do. Same thing should apply to the leader of the greater community. Our community is the same geographic size as the state of Rhode Island. It is larger population-wise than 5 states. I mean, you wouldn't want to constantly turn over the leader of that community because you don't benefit the community in the long run. So I think we do have term limits. They're just called elections. And if the people think I'm doing a bad job, you know what's going to happen, Phil? On January 1, they're going to be inaugurating someone differently. But I feel confident because of the work we've done, the people are going to respond to my message of responsible leadership and give me 1 more term to serve.
Okay, all right. We've gotten a group of migrants sent in from New York. New York's suffering with that population. You know, they're having some real financial problems, and they're trying to solve where to place people. It's pretty chaotic. Do you right now, and I think you said that we have enough, or we can't take any more, or for security reasons, we shouldn't take any more. I'm not quite sure what your position was specifically. I don't want to misquote you, but first of all, what is your position with additional migrants, and how is it going with the 500 or so that we've already taken? What do you think about that?
Well, we had approximately 570.
Okay.
And then we had 2 very bad incidents, 2 criminal allegations. And in our country, of course, you're innocent until proven guilty. There's 2 bad allegations against 2 asylum seekers, and if they committed those crimes, they deserve to be held responsible for what they did. But I talked to New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and I said, until we solve these issues associated with security, we can't send any more. He actually stopped sending migrants to the rest of upstate New York. They really didn't get any more because of the issues associated not only with security at the locations, but the company that New York City hired, DocGo. We're actually about 530 asylum seekers in our community right now, so we're actually down from where we were. We normally, on an annual basis, have more than 2,000 refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers pass through Erie County. So having 500 is not overwhelming our system. It's an issue in our community. It's not a crisis. There's a crisis at the southern border. You could argue there may be a crisis in New York City. We have an issue in our community. This is a federal problem that requires a federal solution. Local government is not going to be able to solve it on its own. The Biden administration declared temporary protective status for the Venezuelans, which is huge because that means they can immediately get out and work, or within 60 days get out and work as compared to 6 months. And that's important because in our community, about half of the asylum seekers are Venezuelans. We have a lot of jobs that are open, especially on the lower end of the wage scale, dishwashers, things like that, cleaners in hotels. Restaurants are having problems hiring people. We can get those people to work. It's going to help our economy and give them an opportunity to move forward and hopefully become new Americans. But we talked to the New York City. I talked personally with Eric Adams. And I said, for the time being, we have to not send any more asylum seekers till we can solve those issues. We haven't barred the door from future ones, but I think right now we've seen that we can handle what we have, and New York City has not indicated to us they're going to send anybody in the near future.
And who pays for these people? Where to put them up and feed them and
They're
take
put
care
in
of them?
hotels by New York City. New York City's paying for the costs associated with the hotels. New York City's paying for the cost of food. New York City's paying for the cost of the security. New York City's paying for their laundry, because you got to have clean clothes. So we're not putting any direct dollars into the system. We have done some vaccinations on sites to ensure that people are properly vaccinated, especially the children that were going to schools. And we've been repaid through the vaccination programs that exist federally in New York State. So when our nurses went out and vaccinated children for mumps, the MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, which is required to go to school, the nurses from Erie County did the vaccinations, but we got reimbursed from the federal and state government for those costs. So almost all of the costs are being paid for by New York City or the state.
Well, this isn't exactly to do with your race, but on a grander scale, approximately 8 million people have come across the southern border since President Biden has been in. If President Biden was here right now, what would you say to him regarding what's happening on the southern border?
Well, as I noted, this is a crisis on the southern border. And I've talked to the president in the last year on a number of issues, including how they have to address the immigration problem. Tom Perez is the special assistant to President Biden, who's also a Buffalonian by birth and has spent his formative years here. So I know Tom very well, and I've talked to Tom about this multiple times. He knows that this has to be addressed. It's one of the reasons why they offered the temporary protected status to the Venezuelans, because Venezuela is in chaos. It's a country in complete chaos, basically being run by gangs and drug lords. So the president, I believe, understands that this needs to be solved. How they go about it requires congressional assistance. And unfortunately, there really is right now, especially with the way the House is kind of in chaos, nothing's moving in Congress, and we need it to move in Congress. We need our Congress working for us. And until such time as that happens, they're not going to solve these issues on the border. Local governments can't fix it on our own, nor should we. This is a federal issue that requires a federal solution, and I believe the Biden administration knows that, but they haven't been able to come to an agreement with Congress on how to do it. Until they do, we're still going to have issues.
Okay, I'm going to ask you something that's more of a philosophical question. Let people know what's in your head. Okay, you're a Democrat, and Democrats and Republicans these days, a lot of people are saying there's not a lot of difference, but typically Democrats are their philosophy is that government is an answer to a lot of problems that exist, and government can be responsible for helping people and making people's lives better. And the opposite position would be that individuals and individual companies can steer their own destiny and use their own money better in their judgment. How, as a Democrat, where's your philosophy come down on responsibilities, government responsibilities? Should government be bigger? Should government have more of a role in people's lives or less?
Well, government is not a business and should not be run like one, but government needs to be run effectively and efficiently. I'll give you an example. Child Protective Services. There's no business that's involved in Child Protective Services because there's no money to be made off of it. But you have to have Child Protective Services to ensure that those youngest members of our community are protected from a potentially abusive adult. And that's an example of where government has to play a role. My predecessor used to say government should be run like a business, and it just can't be, because there's services that we provide, there's no profit to be made. But you got to run it effectively and you got to run it efficiently. I'm not necessarily a proponent for bigger government. My goal is running government better. And we've done that during my administration. We've created an Office of Medicaid Inspector General to go after the bad actors out there that were taking money from our Medicaid system instead of going to where it needs to be, the individuals who need it, especially our seniors as they're getting near their end of life. I look at government as being a solution to some of the problems in society, not all of the problems in society, never should be. But when people point the finger and say government is the problem, that is not the case. Government can be the solution to some of the problems, but it's not the solution to all of the problems in our society.
Well, we've got about a minute left. I'm going to let you use the remaining minute to just basically say whatever you want regarding the upcoming election, why people should vote the way they vote.
Well, first off, I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank the people of Erie County for allowing me to serve. It's been a privilege of my life. There's no doubt about that. I look at public service as truly that. I could make a lot more money if I went back into the private sector practicing law, but I'm not looking at making money. I'm trying to make a difference in our community. So to the people of Erie County, I just ask for your support again so that we can continue the work of creating this new Buffalo, this new Erie County, where we have a growing population, the lowest tax rate on record, the lowest unemployment rate on record, and people are coming to our community because they look at it, not just asylum seekers, but other people from across the country, as a growing community that's spectacular with our arts and cultural scene. So I'm asking for one more term. I hope you'll support me during early voting, and if not on early voting, on Election Day, November 7th, and most importantly, no matter what, get out and vote. It is your voice.
Well, I can't put it any better than that. Get out and vote because it is your right, and it's probably one of the most important rights that we have in this country. And it makes a difference. Votes count, and votes have consequences. So I want to thank Mark Poloncarz for being my guest on this big picture. And next week, we'll give equal time to his opponent. You make the decisions, and I want to wrap it up by just saying thank you for watching The Big Picture, and thanks for watching WBBZ, because we're your local station. You won't get this on any of the other stations, folks. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The Big Picture.